All right, everyone. I am here with Eynelys Garcia, the Vice Chair of Our Revolution, Executive Producer of YRLA, host as well. Also here with Chris Smalls, founder of who was an Amazon organizer, worker, who was fired by the world's richest man for daring to organize against Amazon. He founded the Congress of Essential Workers. Also here with Dr. Peter Kalmus. He's a climate scientist and recipient of NASA's Early Career Award. And so we're here to deliver tonight, to deliver the People's Party response to what we were just talking about before we started, was an absolute dumpster fire of a debate. And so just so devoid of substance, you know, so detached from what working people are experiencing in their lives today. And so we're going to dive right into it, basically. And we're going to talk about, you know, what was said, what wasn't said, and what kind of vision do we have as the People's Party that differs from what we saw tonight. And so I want to start with something that, you know, it didn't even seem like they were going to bring up. And this is amazing because, you know, I mean, science has been telling us for a half a century now that there's basically a meteor heading towards Earth. It's called the climate crisis. For weeks, we thought they weren't even going to discuss that. You know, the two presidential campaigns appear to have colluded with the Commission on Presidential Debates to have excluded the climate crisis as a topic whatsoever from the debate. And yet it seemed like at the last minute there was a switch on that. And Peter, like, I want to get your take on that. I want to get your take on what they said also, Trump and Biden at the debate on the climate crisis.
I was not expecting a question on climate, so I was thrilled to hear it, to be honest. I hadn't been very impressed with Chris Wallace's performance as a moderator up to that point, but then he really wouldn't let Trump off the hook. Like, do you believe the science? Do you believe that, you know, human emitted CO2 is causing the planet to heat up? And Trump could not say the word climate. It was, to see him wriggle under those questions was to me one of the defining moments of the debate. I think that, okay, so the timing of the mega fires in the West. So we have half of the nation basically burning down right now because of climate enhanced mega fires, right? So these fires are basically driven by heat waves and by years of drought and many other factors relating to global heating. And then at the same time, we've had massive storms in the east and flooding. So I think with this timing of climate disaster right now, probably more people are waking up. And you know, I think that the discussion on climate could have been a pretty big factor in tonight's debate.
To me, it struck me as so devoid of substance, though, because you had Biden was essentially just doubling down on backing away from the Green New Deal, you know, saying, no, that's not my plan. My plan is the Biden plan. That has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, so it's funny because, you know, I would say, like, if I had to give grades, I would give Trump an absolute 0, below an F, right? I would give Biden something like maybe a C. At least he was treating this as an actual issue, something that exists in the world that has to be dealt with. I personally would go far further than Biden's plan, but unfortunately, you know, decarbonizing electricity by 2035, and then getting to net zero, total net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Unfortunately, that's kind of the party line right now. And I believe that's essentially a form of climate denial. That's a way to kind of like kick this problem down the road. So it's you know, it's a little bit of a subtle point. I think that we need to go far further and far faster on climate than what Biden and the Democrats are currently proposing. This is a life or death emergency, in my opinion. You know, we maybe later in this discussion, we can talk about exactly why, what's the problem with net zero, what's the problem with 2050. But, you know, I have to say, just from where I'm sitting, I did see a very big difference, huge difference between where Trump and Biden were coming from. And, you know, I even started to get the sense, you could sort of tell that Biden was feeling constrained by the corporate donors, right, by the fossil fuel. He had to be very careful not to say anything bad about fossil gas or fracking, right? He was kind of going after coal and oil a little bit, but he wouldn't go after fracking and fossil gas. But still, it seems like at some level, it is starting to get through to him and his team that this is, at the very least, an important issue for voters. 74% of American voters, all voters, wanted to see this discussed in tonight's debate. And at best, he's actually starting to realize that, hey, this could be really the defining thing for if he's elected for his presidency.
One would hope.
One would hope.
Yeah. Of course, with the corporate money, from the we saw what the DNC did. The way that the DNC, it had passed a fossil fuel money ban, in its platform, just struck it from the platform, basically.
Mm-hmm.
No process, involved in that. You have Biden, who won't even back away from fracking. You have to me, I see two parties basically that are saying, one party that says that the climate crisis doesn't even exist, and then another party that says that it exists, but we're not going to do anything about it, or we're not, we're not even going to treat it like to any, even to the degree that is required.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I was furious with the DNC for refusing to, for actually literally adding not ending fossil subsidies back into their platform, right? They're like, it was an error to take it out. That was just completely over the top. I was furious with Tom Perez for shutting down debates on climate in the primary because frankly, Bernie Sanders' climate plan was an order of magnitude better than anyone else's. And Bernie was criticized for how expensive his plan could have ended up being. $14 trillion over 10 years. But he said quite correctly, expensive compared to what? The whole planet is burning down right now. So yeah, I'm extremely frustrated by the corporate influence of the fossil fuel industry in both of the parties. But we do also have to call a spade a spade. We have to recognize that there was quite a bit of difference between Trump and Biden on climate tonight at the same time.
So, Chris, I'm wondering, another thing that they talked about is, they touched on was racial justice. After the murder of George Floyd, the murder of Breonna Taylor, the fact that Breonna Taylor's killers were essentially not held accountable whatsoever, let off just recently. The police who performed a no-knock search on her home. And so, Chris, I wonder, what was your take essentially on what they said, about the reckoning that the country's facing on racial justice?
Well, I'm very disappointed. No surprise with Trump. He danced all around Breonna Taylor. He danced all around George Floyd. He blamed it on the protesters. He blamed it on us, the people of the community. We're responsible for rioting and causing violence in the streets. Forget about the white supremacists that's antagonizing these riots and peaceful protests, and forget about the fact that the police need to be held accountable for wrongdoings. He didn't shed any light to Breonna Taylor's family or George Floyd's family or any racial injustice in this country. Everything is about law and order, and that's what I heard. That's the one thing that I heard from him when it came to racism was law and order, law and order, law and order. And his actions as a president over the last couple of years, just in the last months, was just even more amplified tonight. For Joe Biden, at least he recognizes the issue there in social injustice. He said it himself. There is systemic racism, so he's aware that there is a problem with the system. I do not agree with him about defunding the police. He said he needs to, we need to provide more, I guess you can say, money towards the police, but I don't feel that's the right thing to do. When we say defund the police, we need to abolish the whole system and rebuild it from the ground up. And how you do that is with the people of the community. You don't do it by just putting a Band-Aid over the wound and expecting it to heal. You know, we have to come together as people, and we have to make sure that the people are able to, like he said, have some transparency with these cases, these type of cases where Black people are being shot down and the police are getting let off the hook. We have to have, there has to be a full accountability for any police officer who doesn't have a body cam on. That should be a federal mandate by the government for all police officers to have a body cam on at all times. If they turn it off, they're automatically prosecuted, whether it be by the people of the community or by the court itself. These are certain things that we can do immediately that can show some sort of, you know, direction towards social injustice change. But until that's being said or even talked about, neither side has a viable solution for it. And yeah, it's unfortunate because if we keep Trump in office, we obviously know we're going to be protesting for 4 years. So with law and order, that ain't going to work. You know, we'll be in a civil war by next year, and that's a scary thought.
It's incredible to see, you know, that the country's been reduced to 2 candidates up on the stage who, you know, I mean, they're both 70-year-old, you know, white men, you know, both pretty wealthy, obviously, but also the fact that, I mean, they're racial justice records, the 2 of them. Trump rightfully brought up, of course, the crime bill. You know, he pointed out Biden's support for the crime bill. Biden is essentially the architect of the modern mass incarceration system. To have, you know, him up on the stage, for that to be the, you know, the Democrats are supposed to be kind of the left alternative to the Republican Party, right? If they're not providing an alternative, what's the point of having another party? What's the point of pretending that there's another party? And so, you know, if the contrast with Trump on the alternative to Trump is going to be, you know, the candidate who designed that kind of mass incarceration infrastructure, you know, a former segregationist, how, you know, that strikes me as incredible, that the contrast to someone who is so overtly racist is someone who has, you know, designed these systems which are systematically criminalizing people of color.
Right, agree. And that's another thing. Joe Biden won't have 4 years to figure this out. You know, we have to hold them accountable starting now. And I'm hoping his vice president candidate to be, you know, I hope that she recognizes that he definitely need to take care of the Black community first and foremost. And I'm only saying that first and foremost because we're tired. We're tired as people. We're tired of going in these streets for the same reasons over and over, fighting for the same heartaches and heartbreaks that we're dealing with as, you know, Black people, just not being able to go out and enjoy life because we got to look over our shoulders when police are behind us. And we don't have no more time to wait on this. Like I said before, there will be a civil war if we don't change. And it's facts. You know, other countries are looking at America right now as a laughingstock, and it's a shame because we're supposed to be the greatest country in the world. We're supposed to be a role model for other countries. We're supposed to be the richest country in the world, but we proven during COVID-19 that we are not united at all. This is really divided states of America, and that is insane to be this way in 2020 in the 21st century.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Eynelys, I wonder, what was your kind of biggest takeaway in general? Like in general, I think that really watching this, I think there's so many people, unfortunately, who, you know, they watch the debates and you know, they're looking for substance, obviously, but they're also looking for how the 2, you know, candidates interact with one another. And I felt like Chris Wallace just didn't have control of the debate. I felt like Trump was just overpowering and completely, you know, dominating the debate. And unfortunately, I think that's it feels like that's what a lot of people are going to see. Biden was looking down all the time. You know, he didn't seem like he didn't even seem kind of aware, like, all the time of what he was doing. And it's kind of incredible that, you know, we have these 2 candidates who you can't even be sure, like, you know, what's going through their head. And again, it's like that this is the best opposition that the Democratic Party has to offer. What did you think?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Nick. Well, I texted you in the middle of the debate, and I was like, you watching this? Because it was incredible. I mean, Joe Biden spoke when Trump allowed him to speak. Trump completely steamrolled him. I mean, he took total control of the conversation. Now, he was very aggressive. I don't know if that's going to be seen as a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if it'll help him or hinder him, but he had absolute control tonight. I mean, it was impossible to hear most of what was said.
He even turned Russiagate against Biden, which was incredible, by pointing out, that some of the roles that his son had had.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Biden couldn't get a word in. You couldn't make out most of what was being said, and I think that was done on purpose, to dilute everything of essence. I mean, I think one of the most shocking moments of the whole thing was, which we expected, but I mean, Trump just went straight at Biden and said, what about your 92 crime bill? What about you calling African Americans super predators? I mean, when he said that, I went, oh my God. Like, I literally was like, whoa, he has no qualms about saying anything. So I think that, and all Joe Biden did was just chuckle and so I think he was completely dominated. I think that there was barely any policy spoken of. I know we have two more debates coming relatively soon, and I hope to see more policy talk then, but somehow I doubt it. And you're absolutely right. Chris Wallace had no control of the situation whatsoever. At times, all three of them were speaking all at the same time, and it was a wreck.
It was impossible to decipher. I mean, why do they allow both mics to be open all the time, especially when one of the candidates is just a schoolyard bully? How can you have any meaningful I mean, it's hard enough to have meaningful discussion about policy with the two corporate parties up there, but how can you expect to have any meaningful discussion when, like you said, three people are talking at once? I mean, I was just, the first hour of the debate, I was like, am I the only one who can't make any sense out of this at all?
Yeah, and I mean, and Biden's main focus, the thing that he kept bringing up was Trump has no plan. Trump has no plan. That was like the theme of the night. But in the meantime, he didn't really give us much of a plan on his end. And he was misspeaking every 5 seconds. He called a 911 call a 911 call. He said that we were going to build thousands and millions of jobs. Like, what are you saying? So it was a total disaster, in my opinion.
Peter, you bring up such a great point too, is that there's an obvious technical solution for the interruptions, is you just mute the mics. And, the fact that they don't do it gets to a deeper truth about these debates. And it is the fact that they want the candidates speaking over each other. They want to enable that, because we don't have policy debates in this country.
No, exactly
we don't have two contrasting parties in this country. What we have is reality TV that stands in and takes the place, for real debates, for substance, for issues. And so that's why, they create a format in which it's going to devolve into this. And then they're surprised when they have a reality TV show, game show host that comes in and runs the thing as it's supposed to be, as you would.
It's basically The Apprentice in real life. I mean, one of the things we learned from Trump's tax returns is that without The Apprentice, we wouldn't have Trump as president right now. I mean, it's just like reality TV has taken over everything, and there's no substance anymore.
I'm just curious to know, how did they prepare for it? Because they've been prepping the candidates for this debate. What did they do? Just talk over each other the whole time? And, I guess they expected Trump to act like an adult for once and do exactly what we're doing here tonight. We're able to have all mics on and there's no over talking, but we all know that that's not Trump's MO, and we all know his personality. So for Joe Biden to come off, he came off soft tonight, and that's not the president that I want to have in office, somebody that doesn't speak up for himself, and allow somebody to steamroll him in a debate that he needs to win, because, he's trying to prove to the American people that he's the right guy. he didn't look like that tonight. He looked like he was very submissive again, and deferred to Trump whenever he was talking, came directly at him. And that's not, a presidential candidate that we want to have in office. We need somebody that's going to stand up and speak up to these issues and be able to fight back. That's what we're doing. We're fighting back. We need him to fight back as well, not just do lip service.
Yeah, and I think the racism really shined through tonight too, because have you guys noticed the evolution? It's now gone from the China virus to the China plague.
And China plague.
What? He actually used those words tonight. So, I mean, the truth is Biden calls Trump a clown, but they're both clowns. I mean, they both look so, this is why we need a new major party, because these are the drunk fighting toddlers that we've got trying to run our country. This is why. I mean, these people, they can't even speak properly. And then when they do, all that comes out is horrible stuff. Horrible stuff. I heard no plan for, creating better foreign. And again, I know there are debates later on, but I'm just saying, no touching on foreign policy, no touching on immigration, no touching on women's rights. And the fact that we're seriously adding another Supreme Court judge that's against women's rights. I mean, are we trying to go back? It's like we're trying to revert the country to the good old times when nobody had rights except for a small group of people. And it's like, enough. We're tired of you trying to go back. Biden is even trying to go even further back than Hillary. So it's regressive. They're doing regressive politics at this point, which is why we need progressives to start taking charge.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the Supreme Court, because, obviously that has kind of like, that has changed the race even more, so to speak. It's kind of like heightened the temperature even more. Our perspective as MPP, of course, is that as long as even if you had Biden appointing that Supreme Court justice, unfortunately, I mean, there are things at stake, but regardless of whether you have Biden or Trump appointing that Supreme Court justice, that they're going to be ruling in favor of money in politics. That neither one of them is going to, aim to kind of undo Citizens United. That they're going to be constantly attacking labor rights, and so until we have parties that are elected by the people, not by Wall Street, because right now, we have a shadow of a democracy, basically. We have two parties that are elected by billionaires, by Wall Street oligarchs. We even have a billionaire, who's taken office now. And so until we have parties that are elected by the people, we're not going to get Supreme Court justices or a judiciary that is actually representing people. And like another point that I want to bring up is, the Democrats have so many tools that they could be using to obstruct the addition of a new Supreme Court justice. We're facing the fact that, of course, the Republicans blocked Merrick Garland, Obama's Supreme Court justice, about 4 years ago. They blocked him for almost a year. And yet here we are, 2 months before the election, and the Democrats are just lying down. There are so many procedural mechanisms. They could leverage a shutdown. They could bring the process, business in the Senate to a crawl. They're not doing any of that. And it's very, and it might seem confusing until you realize that, wait a minute, Trump was right when he said that he left, an inordinate amount of judicial positions open at the end of his term that Trump has then filled. And then not just that, but the Democrats have actually been helping by fast tracking Trump judges, into those positions at other levels of the judiciary. And so, at every level of like examination, it's almost like you have to conclude that the Democrats wanted to hand over and facilitate Trump's takeover of the judiciary.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Trump definitely pointed that out, and unfortunately, we're left with that result. He did appoint a lot of judges, and now we're faced with this new Supreme Court judge as a nominee. Hopefully she doesn't get nominated, because that'll be disastrous for women. This is a huge problem, and you're right. A third party is what we need. I don't see neither parties representing the people, the working class, the way it should be. And yeah, I'm lost for words sometimes. Just thinking about it, I shake my head, but I'm really lost for words because it was tough to even watch this debate tonight. And I can only imagine, is it going to get better or is it going to get worse? We don't even know.
Right.
It's really that horrible. And yeah, we got to do something.
The court could have long-term
go
implications for climate as well. There's, we need to shut down an entire industry, which is going to fight for its life to survive. And this industry has known for half a century that it's just degrading the life support systems of our planet irreversibly, and it has, hidden that knowledge. It has acted in opposition to that knowledge. It has knowingly, knowing that it's destroying the planet, and I don't think that's much of an exaggeration anymore to say that, it has still continued to put its own profits over our collective future and a livable planet. And it's very hard for me to sometimes to talk about the stakes in climate and ecological breakdown. There's studies that have come out recently that say by mid-century we could have over 1 billion climate migrants moving up from equatorial regions, which could have a massively destabilizing effect on global geopolitics, which I don't probably need to spell out the kinds of nightmare scenarios that we can see. I mean, we've had a few million climate migrants trying to come up through the Mediterranean into Europe and from Central America into the US, which I think has, in my opinion, has been a contributing factor to this slide into authoritarianism. If you multiply that, what's happened so far, by almost a factor of 1,000. And you can't even predict what global geopolitics could. And so we've had this industry for half a century knowingly taking us down this road, right? They're global arsonists, they're global genocidal maniacs, basically, the fossil fuel industry and the fossil fuel CEOs. And they're going to be seeking in the courts, there are going to be a lot of lawsuits brought against them for this, and a lot of lawsuits brought against governments, brought against the US government for kind of allowing this to happen with full knowledge. And unfortunately, those battles are going to play out in the courts, and they are going to go up to the Supreme Court. So this in so many ways, you can talk about women's rights, and you can talk about the fight for racial equality. All of these fights, which, let's face it, come down to hundreds of years of extractivist colonial capitalism, right? Take this country built on the genocide of indigenous peoples and on enslavement of Black bodies. And those undercurrents have stayed with us up until the present moment. And now they're manifesting in this global destruction of life support systems on our planet. And so all of these things come together, and they're going to sit in the Supreme Court. So, if the people can wrest power from this established power structure, this duopoly, this corporate duopoly, I think we're going to have to seriously consider ways that we can fix that court. Otherwise, it's just going to keep blocking this, and it's a life or death thing. Like we're literally being killed by this established power structure. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the things that I talk about the most is the need to end Citizens United, because what's happening is we've got a situation where these corporations are saying that they're people so that they can then donate and influence candidates in political elections. But then when it comes time for a bailout, oh no, we're not a person. Don't give us $1,200, give us trillions of dollars. So That's a question that I will be forever asking is, are you a corporation or are you a person? Because if you are a person like you claim to be, then you should have gotten a $1,200 check like we did and nothing else. So it's disgusting, the hypocrisy. I mean, they contradict themselves. They contradict themselves all the time, just depending on what's convenient for them that day and at that time. And I don't see, I mean, at the end of the day, in my personal opinion, these are both terrible candidates that are owned by corporations and that are making theater out of playing up some of the differences that they have, which are not many and are not very large, just to say, hey, I'm a little better on this, hey, I'm a little better on that. You know, at the end of the day, they're both garbage. They're both garbage. And so whether you're voting for Biden, Trump, Green, not at all, whatever it is that you're doing this year, the important thing is to create an infrastructure so that we never find ourselves having to choose between two terrible options again. Because we Americans deserve options. We love choices. So why is it that we can have 3,700 flavors of ice cream, but we only get two parties to choose from when it comes to the most important thing in our country, which is who runs it? Who runs it? So, right. I mean, really, we need to attack corporations that are manipulating and exploiting the system for their benefit and causing Americans to suffer, because that's what's happening right now. And both of these presidential candidates are aware of it and helping them.
Yeah, I mean, just the conversation so generally removed from reality. I mean, you have the two of them arguing, you know, over blame over coronavirus, and Biden essentially saying that, you know, it's your fault that, you know, we have 200,000 dead here in the country, you know, and Trump responding, you know, oh, it would have been 1 million dead or millions dead. That's what he said, you know, if Biden had been in charge. But, you know, both of them are right in the sense that it is both parties are responsible for what has happened in this country, for the fact that this country Biden brought up the stat. He said that, you know, we have 4% of the world's population, about 25% of the deaths, 25% of the cases. Why is that? Why is the world's richest country one of the worst at handling the pandemic? You know, why is it that we don't have the health infrastructure? And of course, it's because we have an ultra privatized healthcare system. It's because we have a government that is essentially for sale. It's because we have politicians that when they received briefings in Congress, you know, from both parties about, you know, there's a pandemic. It could come to the United States and it could be devastating. What they did with that information instead is they took it to rather than, you know, oh, geez, we should stock up on masks, we should stock up on protective equipment, you know, let's prepare for this. Let's make sure that, you know, hospitals are sufficiently staffed, that we're ready. Instead, what they did is they took that information to the stock market. Many of them did, and they personally invested themselves in it, and they made money off of it. They made money off of the crisis. And so they bet on the crisis devastating the country. And then they gave themselves an incentive to see that follow through. And it's just incredible, you know, to see them blaming each other. I mean, in Europe, in a lot of European countries, in other countries, what they did immediately with the pandemic is they just put people on payroll. They put employees of vulnerable businesses on pay. The government covered the payroll, said, hey, you businesses, keep your employees, you know, hired, make sure that nobody gets laid off. You know, we're going to help you cover their salaries. Everybody keeps their job. We socially distance until we can go back to work and resume, you know, something of like before the virus. Instead, you know, here in this country, there was the package of policies that was passed in the CARES Act, passed it essentially unanimously through Congress, was a package that incentivized or mass unemployment. And so it incentivized this kind of like some of the highest unemployment that we've seen since the Great Depression, the absolute devastation of small businesses so that they could be consolidated into corporate, big business and Wall Street. This was all a choice, and it was a choice that was made by both parties almost unanimously. And so it's incredible to see them just basically trying to trade blame over, who's more responsible for this. The question is, why are we tolerating two political parties that both are responsible for creating such a catastrophe that has had so many consequences from, whether parents are going to be able to, take care of their kids or send their kids to school, or it has so many, the ripples through our society have been so vast. It has so devastated the United States to the degree that the rest of the world is essentially quarantining the US and saying that, that they won't accept travelers from here.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And the activism side is going to, I'm sorry. You want to go first?
Go ahead.
Oh, go. What I was going to say, just piggybacking all three of you, the activism side come out of me a little bit. What we should do as people, we got to combine all our movements. The labor movement, the social injustice movement, the climate control movement. That is a step in the direction that we need to go. Combining all these movements addresses these issues in the country, and that's exactly what I see as a vision for what I want to do with with the team and the organization that I have. Is just to try to combine all these issues at every single rally that we're at, whether we're speaking up on social injustice, are we speaking up on labor rights, we address climate issues as well. We invite these organizations like Extinction Rebellion to come out and speak on these issues, because the information, corporate people, billionaires, they hide this information from us. They keep it from us. A lot of people don't get this information that we're telling them tonight, we're speaking about tonight. And that is a huge problem as well, and just combining these movements is people's power, it's real people's power. And we gotta attack this from multiple different aspects, not just from protesting and hitting the streets, but also on putting the right people in office and also building this party up the right way from the ground up.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Chris, because you're doing an action yourself soon. Actually, this Sunday, you are marching to Jeff Bezos' $165 million mansion in Beverly Hills. I know you've got Sunrise participating, you've got Extinction Rebellion participating. You've got, of course, we'll be there with you, the Movement for a People's Party. And you've got our Revolution Los Angeles, of course. And so I know you're doing that. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like going for the jugular, the richest man in the world. This man that he probably made $1 million while we were just talking. Almost $4,000 a second. Almost $4,000 a second. But yeah, I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here 6 months later, still on unemployment, and yet Trump is sitting there telling the American people that the economy is doing better than ever. Where we're still unemployed, we're still waiting on a second stimulus check. We're suffering out here, and I don't. One thing that blows my mind, and they brought up the photo op in front of the church, but I visited DC a couple weeks ago when he gave his speech. He came right out his house. That city was in such disarray. I thought it was worse than Portland and worse than New York. And this is my own personal experience, my opinion, but it was like, this man, how you came out your house and you're talking about anarchy and rioting, is right outside of the White House, literally right outside of the White House. And it's not the people's fault. We're out there because there ain't no change. And we're out there because there is no real solution to the social injustice. So these are the reasons why there's violence. It's not because of mental health. Yeah, it plays a factor, but what do you expect us to do? We're at the brink, and this is why we got to get him out of office, and we got to rebuild from the ground up, and we got to put people in office that represent us, because if we don't, we are going to end humanity forever. And I don't think it even will last 4 years if we keep this administration in office. And that's the scariest thing, that the fact that I have children that, I don't want to ever imagine an apocalyptic type of doomsday that they would have to witness, So all of that plays into factor. And once again, going back to my action on Sunday, I will be in front of Jeff Bezos' $165 million mansion in Beverly Hills with all these different organizations that do represent these different type of issues. And that's what we have to continue doing, building this solidarity, not being divisive, because we have to stay together as people. This is what they want. They want people versus people. But we stand together and we come together. We bring all these movements together, every single action. I'm calling now a call for action with Black Lives Matter, with Extinction Rebellion, with Sunrise, with DSA, with all these major movements that back up all these candidates, all these progressive leaders. If y'all doing demonstrations out there, make sure you invite everybody. Don't exclude anybody for any reason. This is not the time to do that. We all need to come together and stand together in solidarity.
We need a movement of movements, Chris, 100%. And you mentioned an apocalyptic future. So is it okay if I take things back to climate for a minute or two?
Yours.
Yeah. So let's be very clear. We have to end, our task is to end the entire fossil fuel industry as quickly as possible. That's probably still sort of radical sounding to a lot of Americans, but that's literally what we have to do. This burning this fossil fuel sends this stuff into the atmosphere that stays there for thousands of years and just accumulates. All right, that's why this is an irreversible problem, and things are already burning and flooding all around us. It's just going to get worse the hotter the planet gets. Now, the reason we desperately need, in my opinion, the reason I'm here tonight, a third party, a party for the people that's not controlled by corporate interests and corporate money, is because it's hard to imagine the fossil fuel industry allowing any of the corporate candidates to actually shut down that industry, right? It's going to fight for its own survival, just like it has been for decades, lining its pockets. Now we're in a new phase where people are waking up that this is a life or death climate emergency, and people are getting out in the streets. People are starting to break things because they see, young people especially, see their entire future on the line. This is terrifying stuff. Once you really start to understand the scientific projections and just how deep this goes and how deep of a transformation is necessary, it is truly terrifying. All right. So we 100% need a party. We need a politics that isn't beholden to this industry that we actually have to shut down, because it's been writing our laws for too long, and it's going to fight for its survival. And it knows that neither of these corporate parties is going to shut it down, right? Like, I think the DNC saying that it wasn't going to end fossil fuel subsidies. Biden saying, let me repeat, I will not ban fracking. These are dog whistles to the fossil fuel industry. These guys they're walking this tightrope where they at least the Democrats are walking this tightrope where they want to try to convince people that are increasingly waking up that this is a life or death emergency, that they're going to do something. But at the same time, they're afraid to alienate their corporate donors in the fossil fuel industry. So we absolutely need a people's party. Now, that said, like I said before, I still think that Biden did better on climate, but it's not going far enough. And, it's funny how, as we discuss climate as a society, we have these talking points that just get locked into our society. Right now, we're stuck at this talking point of net zero by 2050. Over the next few years, our job, and I think the People's Party is going to be a key part of accomplishing this goal, we have to change that. Net zero by 2050 is a death sentence for our civilization, for life as we know it, for so many species on this planet, for the coral reefs, for the giant sequoias, for the Amazon rainforest. We need to go a lot faster than that. We need to do things like, for example, possibly nationalize the fossil fuel industry, possibly think about fossil fuel rationing, things that, so I'm heartened by the fact that 2 years ago, we would not even be talking about a Green New Deal at all. We would not even have had this much discussion in a debate. In 2016, I don't think climate was discussed at all. So the grassroots movement is pushing, but we have a long, long way to go. I personally don't see a path out of this emergency without a people's party, which is why I'm here.
There isn't. I couldn't agree more. I worked on the 2009 bill. I remember when Obama came in, he said it's going to be climate, one of his top three priorities. It's right there. I saw the way they abandoned it. You know, I mean, we've seen it for just 50 years. You know, we can't expect anything different from these parties.
He didn't just abandon it, he pivoted 180 degrees, and then he tried to make his legacy an increase in production in oil and fossil gas in this country, which was just
energy independence.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And Eynelys, I want to get a final word from you.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I think it's clear that neither of these guys have a plan for anything. I mean, Biden asked Trump about his healthcare plan, and Trump's answer was, oh, I have a fantastic healthcare plan. I'm going to lower prescription costs by 70 to 80% by having governors purchase the medicines from other countries. And that's it. That was the whole plan. And then, you know, when he was asked, oh, why are you nominating the Supreme Court judge? She was a great student. She went to schools, good schools. And that was it. Like, what? Those aren't even answers. So the biggest thing that we need to do right now is get informed, because these people, these politicians, they have a way of speaking as if they have so many specific details that they want to get accomplished. And they have so many things moving, and like, they're like, I'm going to do this. But that's just hyperbole. They're not actually doing anything. When you actually ask them to get into the nitty gritty of, okay, well, what is your plan going to be? They have nothing. So what we need to do is we need to get informed so that we know when we're being lied to, and we need to get organized. So one of the most important things is being active. Like the protest that Chris is going to be doing in front of Jeff Bezos' home, we're going to be covering it at YRLA, because we need to be amplifying the voices of those who are brave enough to come forward and say, hey, no, this is wrong. I don't care how rich and powerful you are. You do not get to put my life and the life of everybody that I work with in danger. So we're going to be there supporting him, this weekend. And we're actually going to be doing a live stream coverage of election night. And Chris is actually going to be joining us, as well as Omar Hernandez. So, you know, we need to do this. We need to inform people. And we're doing it in Spanish too, by the way, because one of the things that we have noticed is there isn't really a progressive political news resource for Latinos. So we're going to be doing English and Spanish coverage election night with Chris and Omar. And you guys can find us on YouTube, Your Revolution Los Angeles, YRLA. And you can find us on Twitter at Your Rev LA. And get informed, share it. I'm not just saying this because I host it. I'm saying this because we need to amplify our voices, and we need to make sure that we are holding progressive outlets accountable so that they actually are progressive. They actually cover things like the Movement for a People's Party, and they actually tell you guys what's going on. So, you know, I think it's fantastic that we're doing these debate coverages. Thank you so much for putting this together, Nick, and inviting me on. And I want to thank you guys for being here as well. This has been awesome. The debate was a disaster, but this has been awesome.
No matter which of these candidates wins this dumpster fire of an election, we are going to have to organize and fight like hell for the better world that we all need to actually survive this.
Yeah, exactly. And you see the continuity in these candidates. You see the continuity in these parties. You saw that when Bush, you know, when he lowered taxes, Obama came in and he made those, you know, tax cuts for the wealthy. He basically normalized them, you know, to a large degree. You see now that Trump has reduced taxes for corporations. Biden's not talking about bringing them back up to where they were before Trump came into office. You know, this is what you see continuously. You see the Republicans come in, you know, they lurch us backwards. Then the Democrat, you know, then people are horrified and they say, oh my gosh, this party's not representing me. You know, they lurch to the other side, to the Democrats, but the Democrats, rather than fighting back, rather than, you know, undoing the damage, rather than moving to the left, you know, more progressive policies, rather than doing things for working people, they just normalize everything that the Republicans did. You know, it's true on taxes, it's true on war, it's true on climate. I mean, you see it. And that is why we're doing what we're doing at Movement for a People's Party. you know? And so I encourage everyone to check out the People's Convention if they haven't. This is the first part in our debate response series. We're going to be doing 2 more for both of the presidential debates. So thank you, Peter and Eynelys, Chris, for joining for this one. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Stay safe, y'all. Solidarity.